I'm Dr. Rick Curry, and welcome to Introduction to Communication. In this class, we're going to examine one of the most powerful and defining forces in our lives, communication.
Long before TikTok, long before Instagram, long before any social media ever existed, humans were still telling their stories. On the walls of caves, by the flicker of firelight, they painted their dreams, their fears, their victories. These markings weren't random. They were the first messages, the first attempt to capture meaning and memory, to say, we were here, we mattered. Today, our stories live in the cloud, glowing screens filled with likes, posts, and memories. Different tools, different walls, but the same impulse. They weren't that different from us. We upload our stories, they carve theirs into stone. Both of us doing the same thing, making sure our lives live on long after we're gone.
Think about it. Every relationship that you have, every class that you have taken, every job that you have worked or will work in the future, even the ways in which you see and view yourself, all of that is shaped by communication. From the ways in which early humans shared their stories on cave walls to the ways in which we now share our stories on social media. Communication has always been about how we connect, how we influence, and how we make sense of the world around us. Now, my goal for you is that at the end of the course, you won't just have a better understanding of what communication is as a concept, but that you'll also have some tools that you can implement in your own life to become a more effective communicator. So let's get started and see how communication isn't just something that we do, but how it is something that defines who we are.
We're going to examine what is communication and why do we study it. So we're going to be looking at those two key tenets in today's lecture. Now, I'd like to start most lectures with something fun. This one is communication based. This is a mother using communication to call her children into the room.
Him and Colin, run in here and come get y'all juice. Shit.
Now, maybe that didn't quite work out the way the mom had expected. She was pranking her children using communication, and her children were good listeners. They came running as she called them into the room. So let's go ahead and start by examining what communication is. Communication is defined as a process, meaning it isn't spontaneous. Most of the time, we don't just spontaneously decide to communicate. It's planned out. We think about it. We think about what we're going to say, how we're going to say it, if we're going to use nonverbals, hand, body language in conjunction with that message. So it's usually not spontaneous. There's a lot of thought that goes into communication. Because it is a process, that's important. Anything that is a process means that with practice and preparation, we can become better at it. It's like being an athlete. A football player doesn't become a star athlete the first time he steps out onto a football field. It takes practice, it takes time and effort and energy, but over a course of time, that skill set can be improved. It's the same thing with communication. We can build and we can work on it. The second key element of communication is that it involves the use of symbols. Now, symbols can be the letters that we use, words that we use. It's the meaning associated behind things. And because communication is constantly evolving, that knowledge base of what symbols are and what symbols mean is important to keep up with.
Now we're going to take a closer look at how communication has changed over time. To do this, we'll use a simple example: two friends complimenting each other's outfits. What you'll notice is that while the message stays the same, giving praise, making a connection, the language is going to shift depending upon the generation. From formal phrases to casual slang, communication often reflects the symbols, the styles, and the meanings of the time. By exploring these differences, we can better understand that a core component of communication is that it's always evolving, and it's always shaped by the words and the symbols we choose. So now, let's take a deeper dive.
Hey. Your fur, strong, warm, good. Your spear, sharp. Tribe strong.
That headdress, Ra himself would envy its gleam.
And your sandals, they walk as lightly as Horus across the sky. That robe will serve you well through many seasons.
And your sandals, they will carry you far, even when the road is long.
That cloak of yours could pass for a lord's finery, and those arrows, straighter than any knight's lance. My good sir, I must remark, your attire is most exceptionally refined today. Why, thank you indeed. It pleases me greatly to hear it.
That's a mighty fine coat you're wearing. Sharp cut for these parts.
Much obliged. Boots like yours? Reckon they don't make many that clean.
Now that is a sharp-looking outfit.
Yes, very nice indeed.
That's a really sharp shirt. Looks good on you.
Thanks. I grabbed it on sale. Can't beat that.
That outfit is amazing. You're totally crushing it today.
Thanks, I really needed that. That fit is fire, no cap. Your drip is on point.
Bro, that's facts.
Straight bustin', that's a W cut, bro. Big W energy.
Dead ass clean.
But what if we flip the script? Imagine people from history talking the way that our current generation talks. Picture grandparents hyping each other up with Gen Alpha sling, cavemen going full YouTuber, or Roman frat boys, medieval knights dropping Gen Z one-liners just before a joust. Let's remix history with some modern language. And while it's funny, it also reminds us that communication is flexible, creative, and it is always evolving with the culture that surrounds it.
Yo, guys, welcome back to the cave. Smash that rock if you vibe with the spear drip.
Bro, don't forget to subscribe. New hunt drops tomorrow.
Dude, that toga, straight Sigma drip, no cap.
Bro, those sandals, built different. Low-key goated.
We're literally him, bro.
Bruh. For real, these Skechers, low-key goated.
That casserole last night?
Mid.
But you?
Well, grandma on God.
Communication involves a sharing or an exchange of meaning. And it is constantly evolving, just like we talked about, because our language changes, the meaning changes. How many of your parents have ever said, "What are you talking about?" when you've said something that maybe your friends get or your friends understand, but the language, the way that you said something, the phrasing, doesn't make sense to your parents or someone else who may be from older generation.
Bro, it's totally mid. The new update slaps, but the devs are no cap bugging.
Mid?
Bugging?
Communication is a process that involves symbols, that involves a sharing or exchange of meaning. Let's look at the letter C. When you see that C there on the screen, what does it mean to you? For me, it's the letter of my last name, but when I see a C, it really doesn't have any particular meaning. When we group that with the letter A, now maybe it starts to have meaning. I see C and I see A, and I combine that together, and maybe I see California. CA is the abbreviation for the state of California. Maybe you don't have any association with California, so maybe you don't see anything when you see CA. However, your brain is thinking ahead. So your brain is already thinking, what letter is going to come next? What do you think? What letter is going to come next? Most of you probably put an R there, car. How many of you, when you see CAR in conjunction, have an image of a car pop into your head? How many of you saw your own car? Those three letters, independent of each other, may have little or no meaning or value to us. However, because communication is a process that involves the use of symbols for the exchange of meaning, each of these letters is a symbol that may or may not mean anything until placed together. But when we combine them together, now CAR has meaning. It means car. What is a car? It's a form of transportation. At some point in time in your life, someone has told you that CAR means car, and that car is something that you use primarily for transportation, to get from point A to point B. However, let's take the R away. Now we have CA. If you didn't think car earlier when CA was present, you probably saw CAT, cat. How many of you just had an image of a cat pop into your head? Probably most of you. If I said CAT, cat, and an image of a horse popped into your head, that would mean that the communication and the meaning there, the use of symbols, is very different for you than for most people. Maybe you saw a black cat or a white cat. A lot of that has to do with your field of experiences, and field of experiences is something that we'll talk about here.
Field of experiences says that how we see the world is uniquely shaped by our own lived experiences. You may have heard the expression, "Don't judge me till you've walked a mile in my shoes." It speaks to the fact that while we may look alike, be the same age, live in the same communities, our life experiences are still going to be profoundly different. Take, for instance, a set of identical twins. While they may share more similar life experiences, the autonomy of the human experience will always ensure that their life experiences are still uniquely different, impacting how they see the world. In Berlow's model of communication, both the source and the receiver share 5 important components: communication skills, attitudes, knowledge, social systems, and culture. But here's the key. While these categories are the same for everyone, they're not consistent across people. So each one of us brings those different lived experiences, different backgrounds and perspectives into the communication process. And so that means the way that I send a message and the way that you receive it may not line up perfectly. And that gap is where misunderstanding or deeper understanding can occur. Now let's take a deeper dive. Field of experiences permeates every aspect of our interpersonal relationships. It is impossible to live a life unaffected by prior circumstances and events. You see, we are who we are today because of everything that has happened to us up until this very moment in time. I'll say it again. You are who you are today because of everything that has happened to you up until this very moment in your life. And life happens, the unexpected, the uncalled for, the unintentional, and sometimes the unimaginable. We encounter events that challenge us to the very core of our human existence, unspeakable pain and moments that scar us, the loss of friendships, the failure and fracture of relationships, the death of people we love, moments in our lives that leave us forever changed and damaged. Damaged emotionally, damaged spiritually, damaged holistically. But see, we are more than the sum of our broken parts. It is not what we go through that determines where we end up, but what we go through sure does impact how we view life. Our field of experiences highlights that. It highlights that our personal journey is unique to each of us. It acknowledges that we don't come to the table with a clear heart, with our perspectives being profoundly shaped by each day that has already passed. Not all our experiences are equal or equitable. Our opportunities in life often reflect the powerful cultural ideals that shape us: race, ethnicity, gender. We are impacted by socioeconomic status, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, food on the table. Regardless of the paths we took to get here, we all share the same human experience and ability to ideologically imagine and physically fight for a world where we are all seen, valued, and inherently loved. While we see the world through the lens of our experiences, we should strive to step beyond each of our vantage points enough to know that none of us have a monopoly on the truth. There is no right or wrong way to see the world, and two things can hold truth at the same time. It can be a world that is both cruel and kind, inhumane and compassionate, full of opportunity and dark, being dimmed by a loss of hope and despair. It can be all of those things simultaneously because our experiences are unique to each of us. So remember, the next time you meet a new person, a smiling face, an outstretched hand, or a somber, downcast brow, you never know the pain or the joy of someone else's journey. They are unique to each of us. They are our field of experiences. With that background, now let's look at the classic communication model, which starts by saying that there is a source of a message.
That message is then being delivered to an audience, what we call receivers, and that message has to be communicated via some form of channel. So in a classic classroom setting, you're going to have the instructor as the source of the message in front of an audience. That channel is going to be face-to-face communication. They're going to be delivering a message to the receiver, to the students. Those students are then going to provide feedback to the instructor. So they may nod their head in agreement, they may raise their hand to ask questions, they may shake their head, or they may look discouraged if they're not completely understanding something. So there's a source, there's a channel for the message to a receiver, and then there's feedback. So if we think about our class, our online class, very similar source of the information here is me as the instructor. The channel I'm using, however, has changed. That channel is now online. It's audio, it's maybe videos, but it's not face-to-face. So that channel for that message is different. The feedback then becomes different as well. I'm not in front of you, so I can't see your facial, your nonverbal expressions to see if you're understanding the content. So it can become a little bit tricky based off of. Now, there are also some different components here that have made the classic communication model outdated. We now use email, text messages, internet, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, a whole host of mediums, of channels that you use to communicate through. And so that classic model has become a little bit outdated. And that's because it doesn't account for what we call noise. Noise, it's everything that is occurring around you that may affect your ability to hear a message or understand a message, and then as a result, it may change your ability to generate feedback to the sender of that message. So there's two types of noise. There's internal noise. That's the thoughts inside your head. I'm busy, right? I've got so much to do. Your instructor's here, and maybe they're lecturing you in a math class. And in your head, all you're thinking about is, gosh, I've got so much work to do today. I've got to do this when I get home. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe you have to go to the bathroom. Maybe you need to place a phone call. That's internal noise. That's everything that's going on inside your head that can impact the delivery, the reception of a message and feedback. There's also external noise, actual noise, right? Noise that exists in the environment. Maybe it's someone's cell phone ringing. Maybe it's a dog barking in the next room while you're trying to study. It's friends are over and they're making a lot of noise. They're watching a football game. So there is external noise as well, and that can have the same impact in terms of your ability to understand a message and then provide feedback. So we now have updated models of communication which account for noise. That says, so instead of there being a sender who sends a message that is received by an audience who then provides feedback, there is a sender who now sends what we call an intended message. That's a key difference. I have a message that I intend for you to receive in a particular way. However, because this noise exists, this internal and external noise is out there, you may not actually receive that message in the way that I intended it to be received. You may not get the full message. You may not understand what I was really trying to say. So part of that is you have to decode that message, and you have to try to figure out, well, what is it that he's trying to say? So that noise has impacted that model of communication. We also have these areas that we call field of experiences. And field of experience is important because it says we are who we are today because of everything that has happened to us up until this very instant and moment in our life. We are who we are because of everything that has happened to us. That is our field of experience. My field of experiences is likely very different from your field of experiences. We see the world through a slightly tinted lens. That lens is our experiences. You do see some overlap. Most people have some shared or common experiences that allow us to better understand. You see this a lot in personal communication with relationships. For instance, someone may come from a relationship where their ex-partner was unfaithful. Maybe they were cheated on. So they go into that next relationship and someone says something or they do something that the ex did before and it sets off red flags, those red flags are set off because of our field of experiences. We have seen that before and it didn't work out well for us. So naturally, through our communication habits, we recognize those things and we say, hey, wait, this, I need to make sure that this isn't happening again. Now, that can be detrimental also because maybe the new person that you're seeing or talking to, maybe they're not doing anything wrong. Maybe they're not the type of person to be unfaithful. So we're applying our experiences onto them, and that can be challenging. So there is a downside or a dark side to that. But these field of experiences do matter. So let's end today's lecture by talking about why it's important that we study communication. And I think you can sort of see this through the conversations that we've already had. But it's important because good communication is associated with physical, emotional, and psychological health and well-being. People who are good communicators are generally healthier people, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. We study communication because strong speaking and listening skills is associated with greater health literacy, meaning we make better choices, we're smarter, we have a better understanding of what's going on around us and how that impacts us in our own lives. The ability to communicate well is also fundamental to being able to fulfill your need for a satisfying identity. So what is it that you've set out in your life to accomplish? Who is it that you want to be? You want to become that person, that better version of yourself? Then the ability to communicate well is probably one of the most important things that you can have in that quest for having a satisfying identity. And then there's a very practical part of why we should study communication. And that's, employers always say that communication skills are the most valuable ability employees can possess. You may be brilliant at your job. You may be great at what you do. But if you are not a good communicator, if you cannot communicate with your colleagues, if you cannot coexist and get along with them in a workplace environment, then unfortunately, you're not likely to have success in your jobs. A few last things is that communication is a primary influence on our relationships. So both our social relationships and our personal relationships. It is what creates, maintains, transforms, and ends personal relationships. Think about it. So communication, how could it create a relationship? You meet someone new, you don't go up to someone and take out a notepad and write, "Hi, what's your name?"
Hey, excuse me. Do you mind if I sit here? The place is kind of packed today.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks. By the way, I'm Alex.
You use communication to start that relationship. Then maybe you exchange numbers and you text back and forth. And you use communication to maintain that relationship or to transform that relationship from maybe a friendship or someone that you really don't know to someone that maybe you want to date. And oftentimes, poor communication can end our personal relationships. You ask people, well, why did your relationships fail in the past? Friendships, romantic relationships, work relationships. Likely it was because of poor communication. So communication is the primary influence on our lives, and we see that every day. Communication skills are critical to building healthy and vibrant communities, and it's the foundation of democratic citizenship that often leads to social change and reform. You see it around you today. People are very passionate about issues that are important to them. Communication is the foundation for driving social change and reform. So in conclusion, what communication is, it is a process that isn't spontaneous. We use it, the exchange of symbols for meaning, in our example of a car or a cat. And it is important in our personal relationship. It is important in the fulfillment of our own personal identities and in the success that we wish to have as individuals. So it really is the foundation for pretty much all that we do. If we think about it, maybe you've heard this phrase, you cannot not communicate, right? That means that everything that we do, we're constantly communicating, both verbally and non-verbally. So it's important for us to understand that, and it's important for us to study communication to help better us in all aspects of our life.